Welcome to 20 Minutes of Clarity. I'm your host, Jason Noble, and joining me today is Andy Merchant.
Today, we're pushing forward in our series on passive investing, tackling a topic that's both intriguing and underrepresented in typical financial advisors' portfolios. It's passive real estate investing. Now, real estate investing may sound daunting, but it's a vital part of a well-rounded strategy. And the reason why that it's not really talked about in our industry is just it takes a commitment and a deep understanding that's required to navigate this market effectively. So today's discussion is crucial for anyone who's looking to diversify their investment portfolios beyond stocks and bonds, and is something that requires a bit more groundwork but offers tangible long-term benefits. And with Andy's deep dive into the specifics, we're set to unpack all you need to know about making passive real estate a part of your investment journey. So Andy, I know you share with your clients like 7 key terms to get them started around this path. I'd love to turn it over to you so we could get into this and share some stories with us. I love hearing your stories.
Hey, I think this is a fun topic today, Jason, that we're going to explore and share. But I do want to highlight this is the topic and the conversation around many of you that are out there that are going, I want to jump in on this, owning real estate. Now, these are not funds. These are not syndications. These are just you going out, finding a single family, multifamily, some of these other terms that we're going to cover, and saying, I want to do this himself. Right, Jason, we often hear it's like, hey, if you're into the business of checking for termites, checking toilets, and taking care of tenants, then this is going to be your podcast. But there are some benefits that go along with it. But here's the thing is that oftentimes people, when they explore getting into this, I think there's great ideas, there's great opportunity, and then they see all the potential benefits, and then it just gets daunting on them. It gets confusing. And so what you mentioned earlier, Jason, is that there's not a lot of proactive advisors that are saying, we want to help those that are wanting to make real estate part of their portfolio, or those that have real estate as part of their portfolio and are actively using it, but how do they make it more passive, right? Because we were talking earlier, and sometimes this is considered to be a passive income play, but because you can do it while you're working, or you can do it as kind of a second job that requires less activity from you, but you're still having activity. So here's the terms. There's 7 really key things that we oftentimes discuss with people when we're out there, and you'll hear is, first of all, is depreciation. One of the benefits of owning real estate is you get to benefit directly from the depreciation. And what depreciation really is in real estate investing is it's a tax deduction that allows the real estate investors to recover some of that cost of the property over a set number of years. So think about it. You purchase a property, it has a roof. The roof has a lifespan. The tax code allows you to use a formula to deduct it. So you get little drips of tax benefits. How that really relates to people as I'm going through some of these terms is that every dollar earned, you can offset with a passive loss. Or a passive offset. Depreciation is part of that. Now, again, we're not here to give tax advice. We're just sharing the experiences and conversations, that we've had. And we highly recommend that if you're in this, you're talking to a real estate focused CPA or tax group, because they're going to be able to help you. But depreciation is a massive benefit in this space, but you have to understand what it is first before you can understand, kind of how it relates to some of that.
Yeah. What about like bonus depreciation? I know that's another thing that could also be considered, and there's some rules around that as well.
Yeah, that's kind of a roller coaster right now. So bonus depreciation allows you to accelerate that faster, right? So instead of having to take a roof, we'll just say is valued at $10,000, it's simple math, and be able to depreciate that over 27 years, right? You get a couple grand a year in then benefit. You can actually go out there and take a bonus depreciation of a certain percentage. Now, it was really excited in 2022 because in 2022 you were allowed to do 100% bonus appreciation, right? That is now scaled back in the time of this recording in 2024. As of now, it is only 60%. Still better than the slow drip, right? So we kind of look at the slow access of your money, or you get a little bit of upfront. So bonus appreciation is important. It's kind of losing a little bit of its overall benefit. There is some discussion of it extending. So I definitely encourage people to understand bonus depreciation. But it's just a way to get a little bit more tax benefit today, which frees up cash flow on a very strong income producing property.
And Andy, going on to the third one, right? You could go even more granular on how you do depreciation. Instead of just taking the house, you could do other things within it. And what does that refer to as?
Yeah, so you can do a cost segment segregation study. Often it's a lot easier to say cost seg because we like to have like less syllables when we're discussing things. But yes, to your point, Jason, it's diving deeper into more things within the property. So again, you're using this as a real estate property. You have tenants. They're utilizing everything from appliances to flooring to walls, to those. All the factors can go in, and so you can work with a qualified CPA who can then come in. It does cost more money, but it allows you to get a little bit more granular in your depreciation. And again, depreciation is so important in these things because it's enhancing cash flow. And most of the time, you're using borrowed money to leverage to get into these properties. So you do have an expense that's on there. So being able to offset that income or lock in those losses for future gains is really important. But understanding those three, I think, is the first thing to do.
So this is where I go, Andy. This is where I go. Like you're talking about, this helps increasing cash flow. And like for those that are watching and listening, right? Like if you're renting out the property for $1,000, it's not going to increase it that way. What Andy's referring to, right, is it's going to increase because you're going to keep more money in your pocket, and that goes to Uncle Sam. We don't like Uncle Sam on this podcast. If you like paying taxes, don't listen, okay? Because this is not what we're here for. Now, we're not accountants, but we deal with a lot of what value can we provide our clients in an after-tax report, right? Like it doesn't, like what we save you money on taxes, you will never get that on a tax form. What you saved, but we know we're keeping more money in your pocket unless it's going to Uncle Sam. If you want to learn more about these techniques and approaches that we use with our clients, you got to go to clearpicturefinancial.com. You got to scroll down, enter in your information so one of our specialists can reach out. Now, Andy, so far we're talking about depreciation, bonus depreciation, cost segregation. That's all about how we could show like money, like with our passive income, and having these depreciations offset each other. But okay, now I go to sell the property. What's that called, right? When I have all this depreciation coming in.
Yeah, there is no free lunch with the IRS, that's for sure. But it's called recapture, and recapture comes in different forms. I think the biggest thing, recapture is just you've depreciated the asset, you've recognized the upfront benefit, you go to sell it. If you sell it and just put the cash in your bank, recapture tax is gonna apply. So you're gonna have to pay. You have to recognize that income at that point. Now, the key point on this is recapture tax is not the same as a capital gains. It's actually higher. And so you'll want to understand that having an exit plan, there are strategies that are considered that you can do that will move out. And but that's really what it is. No free lunch. Understand that anytime you get a tax benefit up front, you're probably going to have to recognize it somewhere or have some strategy to continue to defer it.
Well, so what is an approach that we can use that can help us defer capital gains taxes on real estate investing?
The good news is there's a lot. There's actually a good number 6 or 7 that we study. We're only highlighting on what everybody probably hears, and it's called the 1031 exchange. There will likely be a full-blown podcast that will come out with specifically for our real estate investors on this. But a 1031 just allows you to sell that property and immediately exchange it for a like type property and continue to operate it. But maybe you're just tired of being on one side of the town and you want to move over to a different side, or you want to move from a single family real estate to a multifamily and you're wanting to kind of diversify revenue, through that way. It's allowed. It's just, you're going to take the proceeds of your sale of your first property and you're going to exchange it into another property, and you're going to allow to continue the deferral. And the best part is you get to restart depreciation all over again. So that's a very common strategy that's out there, but it does have an end in sight. So that's what it is. 1031s, very powerful. You got to understand them. You got to have an exit strategy. You got to have an entry strategy around those in order to maximize the most.
Yeah, and to your point, Dak, I could see that being a topic for a whole other podcast in itself with how in depth we could go. DSTs, Delaware Statutory Trust, is a way to do 1031 exchanges. Another thing is opportunity zone investing. That could really help with offsetting taxes. And there's more to come on that as well. But like, I love what you said there, Andy. Like, there's more than just one way to go about doing this, but here's one that's common. And I think that's really good for this podcast. Okay, so we went through at least 5 right now. What are some of the other ones? You said there were 7.
Yep.
What are some of the other ones?
Yeah, so I get a question a lot of times with our clients on, well, what do I price it as if I was going to go down this path, or how do I determine my rent? Sometimes they'll use, a lot of times people will buy these things as they're early in their passive investing real estate phase, and they might say, well, I'm going to go buy one that'll pay the mortgage, and maybe I get a little bit to offset some of the expenses, right? So it's really a trade-off for a while, maybe some tax benefits along the way. But the most common one that we talk about is the 1% rule. And what the 1% rule basically says is, what's the price of the property that you purchased for? Put 1% on that, that's the rent, right? If you want to be more aggressive, bump that up to 2%. But that's a general rule that if you're going to start thinking about cash flow and budgeting, we have our clients think through. It's like, okay, if I'm going to own a property, I'm going to buy a piece of property for $300,000, and I can expect that under the 1% rule, I'll make $3,000 a month in cash flow. Right now, you got to start building out, well, how much is going to cost to borrow the money in order to obtain the property? Do I have to build a maintenance budget? And that's going to really kind of help you build timelines of when these things will cash flow. And that's what, again, where depreciation also comes in, as we mentioned earlier, is that if you're going to get that scenario and you're going to get $3,000 a month, but you're able to recognize, say, $10,000 or $15,000 of depreciation, you're not paying tax on the $36,000 you made under using the 1% rule. You're using it, you're actually getting that cash flow, but only really on your tax return recognizing far less. So the 1% rules, general gauge, that's where you can start, but you have to know your market. Some markets can support more, some can support less. And sometimes you got to look at the property. If it's a long-term renter and you've acquired it with a renter in there, maybe it's not going to be 1% right now until they move out.
And what about the different types of rental properties?
Yeah, and we hear a lot. It took me a little bit back in when I was learning this, but single family, we know what a single family is. It's a one family. Then we've heard of duplexes. That's definitely the popular thing going on around our country right now is duplexes, which is 2 units. And then we're starting to dive into the triplexes, 3 quads, which are now going to be stacked on top of each other, more like a mini apartment. And then you're moving into apartments, right? And so those are really the differences that are out there. I think single family, multifamily are really the most common for early stages. They see some opportunity. You have to look at your market. Once you're starting to move into quads and apartments, obviously those might be the better return on your buck, but they're going to be a lot more work, and you need to have a little bit more experience in those areas. But those are really kind of the core long-term holds. Those are considered long-term investments because you're renting them out for longer than a short stay, like 7-day stay. So those all have certain benefits. And then the other one that I encourage all of our listeners today and viewers to check out is short-term rentals. That's where Jason, when you and I get really kind of into the tax planning gritty phase of things, the short-term rentals have a whole slew of different tax benefits that certain investors, high earners, if you're listening and you're a high earner, there could be some opportunity if you're wanting to have a short-term rental. But strategy has to be in place. Conversations with CPAs have to be in place because theirs are starting to become a pretty popular. But short-term rentals, Airbnbs, VRBOs, those are designed to be less than 7 days. And you can, obviously rinse and roll those on a regular basis. And so those are also another option if you're looking at getting into the passive real estate space.
Yeah. And so, another thing is, I think it's important we talk about is like, who's that good team to have around you as you go into this type of investing approach and process? Like we talked about the accountant, right? Having a good real estate accountant. Yep. Who else comes to mind?
Well, you know what? You got tenants out there, so you need to make sure that you're not going to lose your net worth because you don't have the right legal structure. So having a really good legal attorney in your court who understands the real estate law in your market is going to be very important. You're going to want to have, someone in the risk protection, the insurance space. Jason, we've talked a lot. right now it's hard to get coverage, on property with all of the weather we've had and just the insurance costs. A lot of people aren't covering certain types of buildings in certain markets. So, but having a really good one in your corner to be able to help you with this, and then of course you might need some investors. That's maybe a missed one. Is
Hmm.
you might be okay by doing it yourself, but your bank's going to be a good banker is going to be part of it. But maybe you can go find that money private, or do some carried interest as well. So those are your key partners. Not to mention great partners like you and I.
Of course. Yeah, well, working with a financial professional that understands this comes into play. Also, working with a real estate agent that understands this type of investment. Um, I mean, you would want to ask them like, how many of your other clients are actively engaged in like real estate investing? Because the real estate agent may say, well, I've done that in the past, or oh, I do this all the time. But then like you start going down the path, and they're not getting you the deal flow fast enough. Like there's so many apps right now as well that you could be able to find some deals, even like reviewing the 1% rule. Like the 1% rent rule, right? That Andy was talking about earlier is like Zillow Rentals. It's just this app that you can see what rent is going for in the area. And if you see that the fair market value of rent is going to be less than that 1%, then you got to go, okay, what am I going to be able to do with depreciation? What is this cash flow going to mean for me? How much am I going to put down in order to get this property? And if that's purely if you're looking at it from an investment perspective, right? Let's say you're going to look at house hacking. That's a new term that we just brought up. So let me kind of go into house hacking. You own a single family home and you rent out a room. Okay, and that room could be short-term rental, but or you may also want that long-term rental of like a roommate. That would be a way of house hacking. When I was in college, I was working at this restaurant, and one of the bartenders, she was like 24 years old. She rented to two other servers in that restaurant. And so I was talking with her about what she was doing back then, right, as I was going through my undergrad. And she was like, oh, well, like I pay this much money. It was like $1,400 a month for the mortgage, but they each pay me $800 a month. So she was getting $1,600 a month, paying $1,400 for the mortgage. She was making $200, and all she had to really focus on was splitting the utility bills and paying the property taxes. Now, this happened to be in South Carolina, and the property taxes, even back then, were like $2,000 a year. So if you're listening to this in New Jersey, I apologize, right? But like, it's just like that happens to be where you live in the country as far as property taxes. So she was, I mean, net cash flowing, a positive cash flow, and being paid to live in that place. Now, and like she started to get serious with another bartender, and I was like, hey, so what if you guys decide to get married? She was like, we'll just rent out this other room to another server and buy another place, and this is going to be paying for itself. Okay, now I'm going to age myself. This conversation was in 2002 in the Myrtle Beach area in Conway, South Carolina area. I mean, I don't remember her address. That'd be weird if I did, right? All this time later. But like, what about the price appreciation on the property on top of that? And if she never sold, she's still renting it out with the increase in rent over the years. Right. So like this was something that stuck with me as I started to become a financial advisor. And I have the pleasure of working with this young gentleman who house hacks today. Um, he has 17 properties across the United States. When I first met him, he was all in California. And I said, hey, you have a lot of geographic risk. He was like, what do you mean? And I was like, what if there's a massive, like, I don't know, earthquake and like California just falls into the ocean? Like all your portfolio is gone. He was like, no, you're right. So he started to do more advanced investing in outside of California. And now he has it in like, I want to say 17 different states. But he was single when I first started working with him. And he rented out rooms in his house. He had duplexes and triplexes all around the area, to the point where he had to get a property management company. That was something that we didn't talk about before, but I'm bringing into with the story. He didn't want to deal with even like the phone calls at like 2 or 3 in the morning. So he had this property management company that would come in and handle anything that was under $500 in expenses. They got the phone calls, they got the emails. He got the checks in the mail, right, for those properties. And he's doing the same thing. But it got more complicated as he went to other states that he didn't have properties in. But he still had to find those team of professionals in those different areas to be the eyes and ears and to work with him, right? And that was an exciting part of the journey. Well, now this is pretty cool. And I know he listens, so he's probably like, he's talking about me, he's talking about me. And I always change the names to protect the innocent. But Sean here, he just got engaged and they're about to be married. And they're now in the conversation with me going, okay, we're now looking at moving to this property. We're going to have those tenants move out, right? And we're going to move in. This is where we're going to start our family. This is where we're going to start our marriage. And then when he moves out of the place he's in now, he's going to be able to rent that. So there's another term. We didn't talk about that in the top 7, but there's something I focus on as a planner is like, what is your debt to equity? And so it's so easy to try to get in with like little money down. It helps with the return on investment, with the lower down payments. But then when you have the market volatility of the real estate market, like a pullback in the real estate market, and you're over leveraged, that's a bad place to be. So you would want to make sure you put a decent amount down. Now, because Sean was going down this path where he was over leveraged, we started having conversations over his cash flow paying down some of the debt. And we were able to do that. But then in like 2021, when mortgage rates were super low, he was able to refi at a very low rate for 30 years. I mean, just now he's just a cash cow with the passive income that's coming in off the portfolio, where within 2 years, he can retire from a high paying executive job for an oil company. He could retire. And I want to say he's turning 36 this year. So by the time he's like 40, he could be financially independent because of the portfolio income strategies that are coming in through real estate, coupled with what we're doing within his 401ks and IRAs and joint brokerage accounts. Well, soon to be joint brokerage with his fiance. So Andy, I want to share that story because it incorporated a lot of the things that you were discussing in those top 7 terms that we look at when we start building out the strategy. Yeah. We went long on the 20 minutes, but what's the call to action? I'm going to have you take us home on this.
Well, no, I mean, the story's great and the story summarized it all. But here's the thing is, real estate investing is here. It's been here. It's going to stay here. It's one of the easier ways to build in passive investing, or passive income through earned engagement. But to your point, it takes a strategy. It takes a plan. So the call to action is that if any of the information we covered had an interest, right? If you're maybe you have a real estate portfolio, but you don't really have a way to track, monitor, and have that exit plan, right? Those are all the things that we want to help you with. Don't be that person that has a bunch of assets, pass away, and leave your family with a nice cash flow, but a headache of transfer and understanding. So our goal and our ask is contact us today at clearpicturefinancial.com. Our team focuses a lot on this space. This is one of the areas that we specialize in, is helping clients with real estate. So 1, contact us. 2, if you're interested, have a goal, have a plan, have a team. If you're out there and you don't contact us, that's what I would be stepping up next. So, and I'll take us out with this, is that we love this space so much on the active side, but you know what? There's a passive and syndication that we're even going to break it out a little bit further. Jason, right? We're gonna bring in a great partner of ours, a great friend, who's going to talk about syndications and ways to do it without having to go check for termites, toilets, and deal with tenants. So, hey, appreciate you guys all tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Clear Picture, 20 Minutes of Clarity, and we'll look forward to talking to you guys next time.